There are two basic types of tent construction: freestanding and non-freestanding. Most backpacking tents are freestanding tents. That means the tent is supported by poles and can stand on its own without stakes or guidelines. Some advantages of a freestanding tent are that they can be set up and broken down quickly. They're also very easy to move and reposition if necessary. Also, it's easy to remove dirt and debris by just holding it up in the air with the door open and shaking everything out. Non-freestanding tents rely on stakes and guy-out points for their structural integrity. The primary advantage of a non-freestanding tent is that they're typically much lighter in weight than a freestanding tent because they have fewer poles, but they're not as strong in inclement weather. Tents are divided into two main categories: 3-season tents and 4-season tents. 3-season tent is suitable for the worst weather of spring, summer, and fall, and is the most commonly purchased type of tent. Not a lot of people are out there winter camping. 3-season tents balance ventilation, strength, and warmth retention, making them the most versatile type of tent. Properly pitched with a taut rainfly, 3-season tents can withstand downpours, but are not the best choice for sustained exposure to harsh storms, violent weather, heavy snow, or cougars. 4-season tents are for the heaviest snow, rain, and the fiercest winds, conditions you'll most likely encounter backpacking in the winter or at high elevations when you're mountaineering. They use more poles and heavier fabrics than 3-season tents, so they inevitably do weigh more. They offer fewer mesh panels, which hinders ventilation and can make them feel really stuffy and too warm if you're using them in milder climates. Their chief function, though, is to stand firm in the face of seriously inhospitable weather, in winter or above tree line, as well as supporting heavy snow loads. Tents are built in one of two ways, with either a single or double wall construction. The most commonly used tents are double-walled tents. They have a waterproof floor and a breathable mesh canopy. When needed, they can be covered with a removable rainfly. Double-walled tents have better ventilation than a single-wall tent, which reduces condensation and is more comfortable on warmer nights, which you're going to find in the summer. The rainfly is removable for hot days and those warm evenings with clear skies, which is what camping is all about. Single-wall tents are constructed of waterproof and breathable fabrics and do not need a rainfly. A single-wall tent has the principal advantage of being inherently lighter weight than the double-wall variety. The biggest disadvantage, though, is that lack of ventilation. There are also ultralight sleeping systems. Those are designed for backpackers who want to travel light and fast, or even just light. Ultralight tents have no frills, very few features. They are simply light. One example of an ultralight system is the bivouac bag, or a bivy sack. A bivy consists of a waterproof floor and a waterproof breathable upper layer. Kind of the same strategy used in a single-wall tent, but they're in a smaller, tighter package. A bivy sack acts and looks like a protective cocoon for you and for your sleeping bag. These are often packed by mountaineers as emergency shelters, but they can also be used for ultralight backpacking. Some models are basic sacks with nothing more than a face hole. Others offer some fully enclosed, pole-supported headspace with mesh netting to separate you from bugs, which is really nice on those mosquito-intensive days. Advantage is that they're lightweight and they save space, but the drawback is that sleeping in one can be confining. There's no sit-up space or necessarily enough room to change clothes or any other interesting sleeping activities you may want to participate in. Models that don't have bug netting are also going to leave you exposed and vulnerable. Hammocks are another minimalist favorite. Biggest advantage is weight. Because of the lack of poles or sleeping pad, hammocks are ideal for the ultralight backpacker. Hammocks suspend sleepers off the ground between two fixed objects, which means you can camp over rocks, brush, or uneven ground. The drawback is that a dual tree setup isn't always available or very easy to locate, depending on your location. Because there's no layer of insulation underneath you in a hammock, it severely limits that effective camping time to warm months only, but it makes sleeping on a hot night all that much easier, and it is a really, really great experience. There are three main specs listed by the manufacturer to help gauge a tent's interior space. You're going to want to look at floor dimensions, floor area, and peak height. Tent floor plans show length and width measurements in inches and in centimeters. Two-person tents measure somewhere in the mid to upper 80 inches for length and the mid-50s for width. Standard sleeping pads are 20 inches wide, which gives two people about 14 to 15 inches of hip-to-hip wiggle room. Wiggle room. Two-person tents are big enough for two people who don't mind sleeping shoulder to shoulder. All gear must be placed in the vestibule or outside the tent. There's just not enough room inside the tent with two people. The interior ceiling is high enough to allow you to sit up in the middle of the tent. Three-person tents are often a really nice option for a party of two if you're planning on spending multiple days in that tent. A higher floor area number indicates that the floor area offers more space. This number, however, does not account for the slope of the walls and may not be the best indicator of actual usable floor space. The same goes for the square footage shown for vestibule areas. A vestibule is a fantastic option on a tent. It's an extension of the rainfly that goes out beyond the doorway and down to ground level. They're extremely handy and they allow you to store your pack and gear out of the rain without taking up room in the tent. You can also put your boots out there and prevent them from getting dew in them if you leave them outside. You can often get by with less internal floor space if you have a good-sized vestibule, so you want to balance those two options when you're shopping for a tent. Peak height is measured at a single spot inside the tent and does not necessarily represent the entire interior height of the tent, just the highest point of the tent. If you're venturing into areas where bad weather may hole you up in your tent for extended periods of time, it's better to be in a tent with the room to sit up and move around to make sure you're comfortable. This isn't that much fun for long periods of time. When you purchase your tent, you'll also want to get a footprint, which is a custom-fitted ground cover that is placed beneath the tent floor as a buffer from scruffing, punctures, and general wear and tear. They're sized to fit tent shapes exactly, so their edges don't extend beyond the tent perimeter to prevent rainwater from collecting beneath the tent floor. If you ever had that experience, you don't want to repeat it. A gear loft or attic is a mesh shelf that can be suspended from the tent ceiling that uses clips or straps and keeps random gear up and out of the way. They're very useful to have if you want to avoid using up precious floor space or if you need to dry something out. If your tent doesn't come equipped with one, there are many options available to purchase separately.